everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and the world has hit a catastrophic all-time high debt level. And going into this article by Zero Hedge, it says at the end of 2016, in a period of so-called coordinated growth, global debt hit a new all-time high of $217 trillion, over 327% of global GDP, and up $50 trillion over the past decade. Well, now on January 4th, 2018, the IFF released another global debt analysis, which disclosed that global debt rose to a record $233 trillion at the end of Q3 of 2017, between $63 trillion in government, $58 trillion in financial, $68 trillion in non-financial, and $44 trillion in household sectors, a total increase of $16 trillion increase in just 9 months. Now, according to the latest quarterly update, the IFF has calculated that global debt rose another $4 trillion in the past quarter to a record $237 trillion in the fourth quarter of 2017, and more than $70 trillion higher from a decade earlier, and up roughly $20 trillion in 2017 alone. And it looks like we're reaching peak debt here, folks. And before we get into more numbers and more stats, John, I want you to explain to the audience, because I know a lot of people have this question: who is the world in debt to?
Well, we're in debt to the private central banks that are run by the banks. That's where it all comes down to. It all goes back to that. And of course, to the banks, like there's very little private institutions that are borrowing money. Everybody's part of this fractional reserve banking system that have created a mass amount of debt worldwide, and you can see just how crazy it's become. Like we're in the 300s of trillions, 327 trillion, and it's just accumulating slower and slower now. It's very interesting, Josh. As we've seen this massive since 2008, it's gone up, $60 trillion. It's almost like gone up 50-60%. That debt level in just over 10 years. So that is a substantial amount of debt that you just accumulated worldwide. And of course, this is not just a easy accumulation by the governments. Everybody's accumulating debt. It's just a mass amount accumulation of debt at a worldwide level, Josh. And it's just happening at such a speed. And I think we're hitting, it's been a hockey stick. If you really take a look at it, on a global scale throughout history, you'll see massive hockey stick. And well, what happens when we have massive hockey stick events, especially with Al Gore's hockey stick event that, we can talk about that a lot, but I just bad example. But anyways, the hockey stick is when we just have you can call it a place where it's just going so fast that it'll just accumulate very fast, but then it's game over. And you see that with hyperinflations too. You have a hockey stick of the devaluation, how fast it happens. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that level, because you got to remember, everybody has a fiat currency system on a global scale now, Josh. And we usually haven't had that. We usually had like a couple of countries that went fiat and then failed. Now we have everybody almost, except for a few countries.
Yeah, well, of course, debt servitude is where they want you. A populace in debt is a populace in servitude. If they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, putting you into perfect servitude, exactly where they want you. And all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. They always have, they always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. And John, what is the end result of this massive debt accumulation for the average person sitting at home watching this video?
Well, the end result is, of course, bankruptcy, because there's never going to be enough new money being able to be created in order to pay off all that interest. Because you got to remember, there's also interest that are owed on all that debt, and not all that interest exists in current money. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people that are going bankrupt because they can't pay the interest on that debt. As you hit the debt, I talk about this all the time, a debt saturation point where there's so much debt accumulated that there's nobody else that can get into debt, and then the whole system collapses in on us.
Well, 327% that's of GDP. of global GDP. That's insane. And just looking at, I mean, all banks are insolvent. The banks are bankrupt. That's another great example that we have to bring in. John did a lot of research, and we did a report not that long ago. Your bank is bankrupt. Check that out on our YouTube channel after this video, because John, you have some stats here that you are looking at from a Steemit post you did not that long ago.
Yeah, this is about 6 months ago. And what is interesting, what I did is I created a balance sheet. I went in great detail. It took me about a week to find all the information I needed. But what I did look into was the central bank's balance sheets. And what I found was staggering, Josh. Just from 2008, central banks accumulated $47.81 trillion of bad debt that they bought up from the banks. That was debt that was collapsing. It was going bad. So they had to accumulate that onto their balance sheets. Now, actually, the total money held by the central banks, like they're on their balance sheets, Josh, is $70.79 trillion as of 2016, and that was 94% of GDP. 94% of GDP was bad debt held by the central banks. So we are not in a good state in the economy. And if people believe that, this is going to go so great, look at, Venezuela, where their balance sheet increased 1,133% because of their hyperinflation. They're trying to do the same thing, the quantitative easing, buying up all this terrible debt that is out there in order to try to save the economy from complete disaster. Because that's what happens every single time you implement this debt-based system and you let these bankers, either if they're private or if they're government run, everybody just have no sustainability onto what makes sense, and they just borrow out or print out just oblivion amount of money, and then we wonder every time why the system fails. Like, we'll sit there, a couple of years from now and wondering, like, what the heck just happened? Well, just go back and read in history books. There's like 6, 7, even thousands. Some people say there's thousands. The ones that I looked at is, at least 300-400 that I looked at was the same kind of the thing that would happen. It was just that mass accumulation of debt, massive government, a massive taxation. People were fed up with all the politicians that screwed them over and got them into the place, or the kings or queens that got them into all of that. And it's the same story today. Why? Concept. Yeah, we're not learning.
Well, and you've gone into it before, John, just like a sewage slushing around all this debt, and eventually we're going to see that sewage turn into a hurricane, and that isn't going to be nice to rain down on us.
No, yeah, and we will drown from hurricane like sewage rain. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. Well, and it all comes down to so much centralization. It's always a centralization of everything, from money to government to the markets to everything is centralized. Everything is manipulated into temporary prosperity and long-term absolute destruction and devastation. And this is why we talk about this issue. We want to bring this message to the populace and make sure we can bring as many people to this message as possible as individuals, not coercive collectives of state and servitude. So it's so important for individuals to be financially responsible and self-sustainable and do their own due diligence, take this information that we're giving you, and then go out and look for yourself so that you can make sure that you can take every precaution in order to keep yourself and your family safe in the inevitable event of a fiat crash and this massive stock bubble, the bond bubble, everything that we're facing right now, and this global monetary problem that we're facing. And of course the fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation in the markets and the monetary system. So you can't put a date on this is when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen, which is why you have to take this and run with it and do whatever you can. This is our opinion, not financial advice, not investment advice, because of course there are laws surrounding that, so we have to lay that out in this video. But folks, do your own due diligence, find this information for yourself, and do everything you can to ensure that you can protect yourself and your family. So food, water, shelter, self-defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And then of course, gold, silver, cryptocurrencies that have fundamental value, not just any of them. Most cryptocurrencies are terrible, but find the ones, do your own due diligence, that have fundamental value, that actually provide a great product, and then decentralize your life in every way you possibly can. Make sure that you aren't dependent on government and banks to get by because they are dependent on your dependence. And that is when it comes down, what it comes down to. They want you in complete servitude to them, so they are happy when you are dependent on them. And that they always try and push society to that brink so that they can push you into further servitude. You must escape that at all costs. You must break free. John, bottom line?
Yeah, bottom line is this has happened so many times throughout history, and the reason why Josh and I are talking about what you need to protect yourself is because the history books tells us that's what people that survived it actually had in their possessions. It was the commodities and the precious metals. And I wrote a book about it, the End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, just to give you an idea of what happens, throughout these crises and wherever we're at today. So yeah, that's the bottom line, Josh. We're just going to keep on accumulating debt, but it looks like we're kind of slowing down, which is just the prelims of what is happening, where we're going to hit a tremendous deflationary event when all this debt will start to collapse. This huge mountain that's like, we're looking at, a mountain that's probably big, 10,000 times bigger than Mount Everest, with all this debt slushing around, and it's going to come falling down.
Can we hope for a debt jubilee?
Well, I think it would be better to be in as little debt as possible. There's been lots of debt jubilees throughout history, but I think if we don't fight, like, this is what we got to do. You got to fight back by protecting yourself against being in too much debt, because what they could do, they could just turn around and create a new system and say, well, we're going to eliminate all the government debt, all the terrible debt that was around, but then we're going to take all of your debt, we're just going to make it a little bit less, but comparable to the new system that we implement, and then you're still in a whole trackload of debt, so we can control you. So get out of debt as much as you can, protect yourself against the failure of the monetary system.
Yeah, they'll just look for more ways to be more centralized, and you as an individual need to look for more ways to decentralize and be independent. Thanks for going into this with us, John, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also find us at steemit.com at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in Steem, the cryptocurrency. And also find us at the Red Pill Expo, which we have a reference link for below in the description and the comments as well. Hosted by G. Edward Griffin, amazing speakers coming out to speak this year. Don't miss it. It's in Spokane, Washington, June 21st to 23rd. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.